Good evening, everyone, and welcome in GUBERNA's third Home of Governance talk this season. During each of these digital sessions, GUBERNA enters in conversation with a board member or a company leader of a Belgian organization. And that way, we want to stay in touch with what is going on in boardrooms on the floor of the organization. Because post-COVID and maybe also during COVID, we witnessed a lot of changes, accelerations, challenges in the society, and of course, also going into the businesses and into the organizations. So how did these challenges, these changes, do they impact our organizations? Our own strategic theme, CAP 2030, Governance and Transition, focuses on that impact in different domains. So we look at diversity and inclusion and board dynamics, at the digital acceleration and at sustainability. And our aim is, of course, to incorporate these themes in these talks. Basically, we are conducting 7 Home of Governing talks, and each one with a different type of organization. Last time, maybe some of you were already there, we talked with Sébastien Otlet of Gage Packaging, that was a family business, and today we are going to the financial sector. So I'm very happy to welcome Katrien Beuckelaers, CCO and Chief ESG Officer of NewB. Welcome, Katrien. Happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. Because it's quite an interesting topic. NewB and the name itself, it says it's a new bank, quite literally, because I think it's been a while since a new bank received its license. NewB received its banking license in 2020. It was then recognized as a Belgian bank and a credit institution. That's something, a bank without a legacy starting from scratch, it's quite a challenge. That's one thing that it's new, but it's also new bank is also a new kind of bank. You have a very clear raison d'etre, a very clear purpose. So I was wondering, what is the story of origin of NewB? How did it come into existence? Why and what are the values?
Yeah. So welcome everyone. I hope I will be giving you an enjoyable evening. So I'll do my best. I'll really do my best. So NewB is a cooperative, ethical, and sustainable bank, and every word in that definition is very important because it makes us different from the other banks that currently exist. When was the first idea? The first idea that popped up to create such a bank, that was after the financial crisis of 2008. There was I think people who still remember that time, it was like banks were all not good. There was greed was one of the very important words that was often heard, etc. And so in the aftermath of that financial crisis, there were some people and some civil society organizations in Belgium that put their heads together and said, we want to create a new bank. Basically, we want to start a project to create a bank that brings the bank back to the basics of where a bank is, should be there. Bringing together the savings of people and creating from these savings credits that you invest back into society, and not some kind of very complicated investment products, not investing because you want to have a big dividend and you have the greed that was talked about in that time, etc. So NewB was founded in 2011 on the 6th of May, to be precise. The idea was to, like I said, to bring back banking to its roots, and it was actually very obvious to a lot of people there that a cooperative structure would be a good structure, because that's a structure where you align the interests of your clients, who can become a shareholder of the bank they're a client with the shareholders themselves. So NewB was started from the scratch as a European cooperative society. It's part of the statutes that we are that type of bank, which, if people still remember as well, in 2008 was not an obvious choice, because everybody was still now complaining about ARCO. And everybody has ARCO in mind when they talk about a cooperative bank. While ARCO are cooperative shares, but it was no longer the cooperative bank it was initially created, which one of the reasons why as well we as NewB want to go back to the real cooperative bank, and not structures like you are a cooperative behind group structures, etc. It's pure cooperative structure. So 2011, the idea came to world. And then there was a long way in between. A very important other milestone was February 2019. That was a day when NewB submitted its formal application for a banking license to the National Bank of Belgium. So between 2011 and 2019, NewB was basically a project, a dream of people. From these 24 original civil society organizations, there were a lot of other individual cooperatives, cooperative shareholders that joined, so individuals. And it became reality. So there was a big pile. They told me, I wasn't there, it was like 3,000 pages, they told me, that they submitted to the National Bank. And it was not easy. Why? Because like Sash just said, it was the first time in 60 years that in Belgium somebody had this crazy idea to apply for a new banking license. And the biggest hurdle was basically that there was nowhere where in the law an instruction on what you needed to do to create a bank. So as NewB, basically we took it in our own hands with our lawyers. We created this big file. We handed it over to the National Bank, and then it was the idea, like, okay, normally when you hand over your file, the National Bank has 12 months to take a decision. It's like, okay, 12 months. It wasn't easy in the sense for National Bank to decide on what to do, but also they came with additional other questions and additional other requirements. It's important to know that after 2008, which is logical after the financial crisis, the rules to obtain a banking license became more and more strict. And a little bit more and more to the point of bigger banks and not a small bank that NewB wanted to start with. So not easy. The fact that we came with a project that was not a normal bank, but a cooperative bank with all these ethical and sustainable values that is very important for us, made it not easy for the authorities to set their mind on what are these people, these crazy people actually asking. There was a very big dependence of a lot of actors in this process of a banking license. You have the National Bank, I've been talking about the National Bank, but also the FSMA, the North Financial Authority is important because we had to create a prospectus to raise capital, because one of the requirements that came from National Bank is that we had to collect enough capital, at that time 35 million, and you have to create a prospectus, and then you have to write this document that needs to be reviewed by the FSMA. They give you feedback back, often 10 pages with a lot of questions. You have to make sure that everything is corrected and updated. So it's a lot of back and forward. You have also the European Central Bank, who is basically the end institution that helps, that decides. They all had their demands. We also had to come with a change the composition of the board of directors, because you came from a cooperative society who's not a bank, and you have to install a governance body, a board of directors who has to fit the fit and proper requirements of a national bank. So it's been a challenge on a lot of things, a lot of hurdles. The biggest hurdle was that we needed to raise 35 million in capital, and we only had 6 weeks to do so. I think there were a lot of people at that time that didn't believe it would work. But it created a vibe, and I wasn't there. It's funny, but when I hear my colleagues talking about it, it's like a unique moment in history that you can feel. Lots of creativity, lots of things, lots of buzz, lots of how to say, it was like a movement that wasn't seen before, especially not when creating a bank, that one individual was an ambassador to another individual and saying, hey, you can become a shareholder of this new bank, and this new bank is really what we want, and it's only cost you 20 euros, etc. So we managed to obtain this 35 million, and that means that in January 2020, we received a banking license from the National Bank. So the first time in 60 years.
Wow. Yeah. And that's how you came into existence, then really as a banking operator. But you were talking about the cooperative bank. So at GUBERNA, we see cooperation is not an easy way for governance. It's a difficult process. It's a lot of actors, a lot of stakeholders. I see where it comes from, the idea, but Can you explain the governance principles behind the cooperative behind the corporation? How do you manage everything? How do you structure the layers?
There are some layers, and I'm not sure I have a presentation. I have one
Yeah,
slide to explain it, because if not, I think
voila.
a lot of people will be lost. And it's very important. It's very important to stay tuned. So stay awake now. The most important element in a cooperative structure is the General Assembly. The General Assembly consists of all shareholders. As I said, you can become a shareholder of NewB as from 20 euros. And the General Assembly actually decides on the direction that the cooperative will take and when it will take their different steps, etc. It also elects the members of the board of directors, and you have something specific, which is on the chart, which is the societal committee. Based on the identity of NewB, we have 3 colleges, and you see that on the right of the slide. You have college A, B, and C. The college A within NewB are the ones with the social economy organization, all the organizations, such as names are there, for example, Oxfam, Greenpeace. You also have heroin, you have some cooperative breweries who are part of this. So we are 351 at this time of these organizations who are part of this college. You have college B. These are individual shareholders. That's you, me, everybody who wants to buy a share of 20 euros. We're a bit more than 160,000 now, which means that there's 1% of the Belgian population basically who individually said, I want this bank to be created. We say it's 1% if you just count the 160,000. If you think that behind these 351 organizations, there's still a lot of other people and individuals who might not be a direct shareholder themselves, you can see that we really touch a lot of people. The C College is the ones with institutional shareholders. There are only 11 members of them. The difference is that the A College share is 2,000 euros, B it's 20 euros, and C is 200,000 euros. What is important is that in the governance structure of a cooperative, it's always one person, one vote. So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of shares or not a lot of shares. It's very democratic. If you are a person, you have one vote in the college where you are part of. It also means that when there are resolutions to be voted, it needs to pass in every college. So it's not that one can really put his mind or his resolution up to the other 2 ones. So all these principles, they're really described in the statutes of NewB. If you look at more like the capital structure, if you look in euros and not the number of people or organizations that are part of it, it's actually the capital of NewB is 72% is in hands of individual shareholders of these 1% of the Belgian population. Because in a lot of other institutions, you have the institutional shareholders who are the majority shareholder and have, because they're not a cooperative structure and you get more votes because you have bigger investments, they really steer the company. Here it's not the case. There's a balance between the colleges, etc. The second layer that you have on this slide is a societal committee, and the societal committee is something unique to NewB. It is basically a committee of shareholders, of cooperative shareholders, individual ones, who are volunteering to really act as a little bit of an independent internal auditor. They have to view and make sure that NewB direction and decisions that are taken by the board of directors, by the executive team, and what the NewB team is doing is in line with all the values that are also part of the statutes of the company. So there are 13 values that are very key to NewB. They're not just a brand somewhere invented by a consultant. They're really part of the Articles of Association. So the members of this committee is also elected by General Assembly. So we have a General Assembly next week. We have new members who really volunteered to take part of it. And every year they create a report that actually gives their positive and negative points to follow up on the whole NewB actions that have been taken into place by all the different entities in this governance structure. The following is the board of directors. Logically, it actually refines and validates more the cooperative strategic steps that have been decided by the General Assembly. They're also appointed by the General Assembly, the board of directors. You have two committees, the Nomination and Remuneration Committee and the Audit and Risk Committee. That is something that you see often and more within banks, these typical committees. It is committees that actually already analyze some specific matters before, and they give recommendations to the board of directors that then take an official stand. The board of directors at NewB, there are 13 board members, of 60% are male, 40% are female. We want to be 50-50, we're working on this. With 13, it's a little bit different to be 50-50 because somebody needs to be half something. But it's a mix of executive independent directors. There's a mix of representatives from the A College and from the C College. So, and a lot of profiles are a mix between people with a lot of banking experience, but also with a lot of links to sustainability already in a new role that they have, for example, today. Executive committees, we are 4 directors. I'm one of them. So we pass the fit and proper tests that we have to go through with the national banks, with the National Bank of Belgium. It's a joy. It's a joy to take part of this. We together, I think, with the 4 of us, we bring together a bit like 100 years of experience in banking. So it is. We all have a banking background. I think that's one of the reasons why we did pass the fit and proper requirements from a national bank. So that's the executive committee, and then you have the NewB team, who is the last piece of the layer, which is the teams that we have. I think what's very important between the executive committee and the NewB team is we have a very horizontal structure. So we don't have a lot of middle management in between. I have directly 6 teams who report to me, and within these teams, every team has a head of, for example. So they're really teams who work together on different things, and there is the hierarchy is not really one of the things that we have at NewB. Okay. So I hope it was clear and everybody's still following.
Yes, certainly. It's quite complicated. There's already a question in the sense of, is there an example in other countries that you were looking at that there was like another organization organized in the same way, or?
There are a lot of more cooperative banks outside of Belgium. In France, there is definitely one. In Italy, in Spain. And they are organized in similar ways. I think it is linked. If you have a cooperative structure, the structure and the way it is set up is very similar to the one that we have. Okay. So it is an inspiration, but it's true. In Belgium, we are the only cooperative bank existing. 100% cooperative bank existing. Yeah.
Right, and there's also another question, and it makes the link to my next one. NewB, if I see the organization, the shareholder and the stakeholder are very close together, and there's almost not a real border between them. So stakeholder and stakeholder capitalism, it's new terms in governance. They gain in importance. There's also the new European Directive on Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence, which says the awareness of the stakeholder is very important and there should be a focus on it. So since you are working with stakeholders / shareholders so intensively, do you have recommendations, tips and tricks for other companies who are just starting to go into that stakeholder management and that approach? For instance, the societal committee, the question about is that an advisory committee, or can it veto, can it block a decision from the board? How far do you go into that stakeholder management?
Yeah. It cannot, just to reply on a question, it cannot block decisions, but it can give us like bad points. Like I said, it's more like an audit. What's important as well is this societal committee. So I spoke about the 13 values that are the foundations of NewB. That includes proximity, includes inclusion, diversity, sustainability. They're very, very key to NewB. The societal committee, one of the first things they did is translate these 13 values into a charter. And this charter is guidelines for all the teams and for the board of directors and for the company as a whole, to make sure that they still act in line with the values. It goes around a lot of topics. It goes from remuneration to how we make publicity, about how we interact when creating new products, etc. So every department has his, and every has their guidelines. And when we don't follow the guidelines, we get a bad result and a bad report. Like I said, a bad audit report at the end of the year. And that audit report is public. So, for example, the one of 2021 is now available on our website because it's part of the General Assembly that we'll have next year. So it keeps us sharp as a company. And I think it's a good practice because it is people who know. As an auditor, sometimes it's difficult if you have an external auditor or even an internal auditor. An entity like NewB is so unique, especially these values are so unique and so important. It might be that they don't really get the exact nuance of everything. These are our shareholders or potential clients of the future who are actually making the valuation and just want to make sure that the bank we are creating and bank that they have is still in line with what they wanted. So that's if this is something that you can set up internally, where you have like stakeholders doing a review on things, not blocking, but like the review and give you advice and keep you sharp. I think it's a very important one. Another thing which is very important at NewB in stakeholder management is it's going to be a straightforward one. Is everything is communication. In the sense of the communication that we can have with our shareholders is very direct. We involve them in a lot of things. When setting up products, for example, and we do this in different ways. We have a forum where people can leave their feedbacks, etc. We use surveys, and surveys are not just to see how somebody is satisfied or not, but also what type of investment product they want, for example. It's not only surveys, it's also creating another committee, like for sustainable investment. We have a committee where we have some of the A members who have experience in that domain. We have also C members, for example, universities who are shareholders as well. They have expertise in the domain of sustainable investments, and they help us in defining the sustainable and responsible sustainable investment rules from NewB. To give you an example, is we create products together with the stakeholder and with the shareholders, with the client in the end. We do this by asking, for example, the investment fund. We did a survey to ask what type of fund do you want us to develop. Then we asked afterwards, okay, what are it's going to be a sustainable fund with a sustainable objective. So Article 9, the most sustainable version that you can have on European level. What are the sustainable development goals that you want NewB to include in these investment objectives? So they came with a response to us. It's not we inventing it in a corner somewhere in the office. When we created the social and responsible investments rule chart, we did it together with these organizations who had expertise in the domain, like the universities, Greenpeace, Financité, for example. They are still in the committee that actually supervise everything today. When these sustainable investment rules were drafted, it was the General Assembly who had to accept them. So it's like checking again, like, oh, this is still what you want. This is still, we're doing this for you. We're creating this for you. So that's the end goal of what's important is then you create a product that really matches the demand of the public, of your public. And the end goal was that when we launched the investment fund, we also asked the shareholders to provide a seeding capital. We wanted to have 10 million in total. We actually ended up with 20 million. Just because you know that you created something where the demand is there. So I think if you, one of the key takeaways I take from there is if you develop products, don't hesitate to talk to your future customer and let them get them involved in designing the product and really speak out and get feedback on them, because they have a lot of expertise and maybe there are things that you don't think about that they think there is very valuable. So that's also a tip.
Yeah. very valuable. And there's another question about the societal committee. I think people get inspired by it. How do you select the members?
We don't select them. It's a general
Okay.
assembly that does. So basically what we do, we ask our cooperative shareholders who wants to volunteer for this, and people can apply. And then these people, they have to present themselves on the General Assembly and they get elected by the General Assembly. So it's not even us, as executives or the board of directors. We don't even decide on them. It's the assembly themselves and people who volunteer. Yeah.
And how large?
Paid either, huh? So it's really volunteering work.
Okay. And how large? How many people are in the?
I don't know now. The thing is I think there are like 20 of them, because they also split in different domains. So they make subgroups per team. For example, like for my commercial role, I have I know very well the 3 people who follow everything up with regards to marketing and communication. But these are 3 different ones that follow up everything which is regards to client contacts and the interaction that we have with the client service department. So they organize themselves in little subgroups to make the evaluation. And sometimes there are some overlaps. And we also have one person who is actually, who is paid by the company, who is more like the secretary. She's the one who's organizing everything. So because the teams need to create a reporting linked to the charter and the guidelines, and then they do interviews. The societal committee can come and interview everybody. They can ask documents. They have access to everything. So and this one person is actually more the coordinator person between the committee itself and then NewB as the team.
It's a quite intensive collaboration, and
it is quite intensive. It's not something like, oh, I'm just gonna. So if you volunteer for it really asks for a commitment. And also from us as a company, we are committed to give them time, because if we don't give them the time that they need to do their work, it wouldn't be fair either.
And that maybe makes the link to this topic of diversity and inclusion. How do you incorporate that in the organization of NewB? Is like also in the recruiting process, you have a very clear purpose, a very clear message. Is it an advantage, or do you see some disadvantages? And like the same, you mentioned already a little bit about the composition of the board and the fit and proper guidelines. Sometimes we hear, it's hard to find board members that give us enough diversity with these fit and proper rules. Do you see it in the same way, or is it, you said it was a good experience?
I think what's very important is the purpose of NewB is very important in our recruitment process. Inclusion and diversity as well. They're 2 of our core values, 2 of 13 values. We have, as a company, received a diversity label from Actiris in Brussels last year. So we're really proud, because that means that we're not just talking about it, it's really recognized externally as well. I think the purpose, being a purpose-driven bank is an advantage, in the sense that I think more and more people are looking for a purpose in their job. I remember I read an article somewhere in, I think it was May, that says that climate concerns can make, if somebody works for a company and they feel that the company is not doing sufficiently for everything which is climate, it can be a detractor. So it can be that somebody says like, no, I no longer want to work for this company. So there is somewhere a vibe that people think it's very important. So it is an advantage. Making sure that people join NewB and are aligned with our purpose is key, as a key element in the recruitment process. And it is almost a go no go. You can be very bright and whatever, the brightest person, but if we feel that you don't align with the purpose and you can fit the governance structures that we have, the way that we work, it's not going to work. We do this by we have this little technique which is called a diversity interview. Which is basically somebody applies, you have the HR does the first screening, you have the manager of the role doing another screening, and then at the end of the process there is an interview with like 2 to 3 other NewB employees who basically are completely different than the person that applies, and completely different means age, sex, but also the job they're doing. So you can have somebody who's applying for a compliance function talking to somebody who's doing marketing, for example. And so we bring these people together. It's also different levels. So I did diversity interviews as well, and people not necessarily know that I'm one of the directors. I'm there with the other team members, so it's part of the diversity. And there it is really it's not really to check if somebody is fit for the job. It's really, is this person in line with the values of NewB, with what we want to set up, with purpose, with the goal that we want to reach, etc. So this diversity interview is something. It's funny because not everybody has a lot of experience in doing interviews. A lot of people have like really crazy questions, and after a while there's these gimmicks going on, but it's fun because I think a lot of people who in the end join NewB, they say it's really the craziest, but also the funniest part of the interview they had. Important is also that everyone who is in this diversity interview has the same decision level, if somebody passes or yes or no. So it could be that even if HR says this is great candidate, even if the HR, the manager of the team says, I really want this person, if the diversity people say, no, he's not in line with the values, we don't think it's going to work, then yeah, it's not going to happen. Another thing as well, as a bank, we basically don't specify that we want somebody with a banking background. We prefer basically not to have somebody with a banking background. Sometimes it's not possible, like for risk compliance functions, like the things that I'm doing on director level. But we have 50%, even a bit more than 50% of the people working for NewB who don't have a banking background. And it keeps us sharp because that means we want to, our slogan is we want to change banking for good. That means that we also have to rethink how we do things. And by taking people from different backgrounds, it helps us to think differently. Another advantage is as well, normally the people that you're in contact with, so everything which is more front is communication, the client services department, the sales teams, etc. You can gain the banking knowledge, but it's important that you can talk to the people in the language that they understand. Don't become too technical. I've experienced in different banks because I've worked in other banks, and I just know that a lot of people sit there, see their banker explaining things. They say like, but in the end, you know, I think a lot of people are invested in things that they don't really capture in the end. This is something that we don't want at NewB. We want to be transparent. We want people to understand what we tell them. And if you have people who don't have the banking background themselves, it's an easier way for them to find the words to talk to somebody to explain whatever is needed. So that's for sure. If I look at the board of directors, because I think that was the second part of your question.
Yes.
Yeah, it is the people that we try to, that we have, if I look at profiles that we have in our board of directors, it's a mix between have people with a banking background somewhere that worked in banking or linked to the financial world, because you need to pass these fit and proper requirements that are the same for every bank, so also for NewB. But also with the purpose and so the sustainability and ethics that is important at NewB as well, because that is what is important to our General Assembly members. And like I said, in the end, it's a General Assembly who really elects the board members. So the balance to find, but we did find them. The board members are the natural partners in that stage of the management team. And to give you some example, our chair, is Bernard Bayot. He works for Financité, which is a research organization that is about solidarity finance and sustainable finance. He works there since 2001. So he's a lawyer from a background. So that's a combination of being a banker, but also having the sustainable aspect. We have the executive director of Greenpeace Belgium, Valérie Deré, who's part of our board member. So Greenpeace is one of our shareholders, but she has an executive director level. So she has maybe not the experience of banking, but she has director level and she has a sustainable. We have somebody else, Christel Droogman, she worked for 30 years in banking, BBL, ING, Delta Lloyd. And afterwards, when she stopped the banking career, she founded Human, which is a place for circular shopping. So she created her own product. So it's again somebody who has this banking background, director background, but this aim for sustainability themselves. So and from the ethical, to give an example on ethical, it's we have Koen de Vits. He's also somebody who has 17 years of banking experience, Landbouwkrediet, Crela, on different roles, director level as well, who worked at NewB as well for a while as director, who stopped and who has a company is called Zinnings, which is business ethics training and consulting. So he's more the ethic part of NewB. So again, somebody with a banking background, very important for the fit and proper, but combined with this ethical, which is also linked to the purpose of NewB.
Yeah, that's very clear. Yeah. There are some questions coming in, so I'll try to treat them now. There's first a question about the past, and I'm going to link it to the question towards the future. Someone is wondering, how did you manage to get your 116,000 shareholder corporations together? Was that marketing, or was it word on word, or how did it work?
It is, I think, the most effect we had from word of mouth at that stage. It was really, we did marketing. We did, there were radio campaigns. There were like these big posters, very ugly, because I remember these posters. They were really ugly in the railway stations. There were radio spots, etc. So the basic marketing background was there, but I think the key element that made it a success was the word of mouth. Was people on, we created this label on Facebook that you add the NewB logo on your profile picture. People started doing that and started to say hey, you have to do this as well. You have to buy this share. So it was really word of mouth. People one to the other. I have people who actually bought them for shares for their nephews and nieces, or somebody bought them for themselves, but also for the kids, for example. So the key success factor is really word of mouth, and social media can help. People talk to each other a lot easier on social media than they do nowadays.
Yeah, if there's a buzz. And then then the other question is then towards the future, like I'm going to read the question, because it says so NewB has 116,000 cooperators, but only 16,000 clients. So how will you convert them towards clients? Or is that, yeah.
It's the $1 million question, and it's not. It's a question that since we're back in public, everybody's asking that one. And I have this phrase that I used already a few times to explain the differences. We try to first convert these cooperative shareholders to clients, because they know NewB. We created NewB based on the values that they wanted, the insights that they gave to us, etc. But changing banks is not easy. I explained it different times and they told me it's no longer Tinder, is no longer hip and trendy. I don't know.
No idea.
But it's like I say it's like Tindering in an environment where everybody already has a relationship, because everybody is a client of a bank already. You have your habits. It's not an urgent thing, because you're already served. So what we find out is, because we did a survey with our cooperative shareholders, is like, if you're not a client, why you're not a client yet? And it's like, oh, I just didn't have the time yet. Oh yeah, really, I have to do this. And then you have people who really have a more fundamental thing. Is like, yeah, I have bought a house, and that makes me linked to a bank, etc. as well. We say to people, well, in that case, open an account for your kids, because we all know if you open an account for your kid, the first bank that you have, I think a lot of people are still client with the bank that their parents opened one day a bank account with. So do it for your kids, show them the good way. It's their future as well, which is important. So it is not easy. How do we want to convert them? I think it was a little bit unlucky, in the sense that we obtained our banking license. It was lucky we obtained a banking license in January 2020. Unlucky was that there was this COVID starting just afterwards. So while we had this good vibe and buzz created with the capital campaign, we started building this bank. I think in the COVID period, there were a lot of startups who didn't even manage to build something up. We at least, we did it. But we also lost a bit connection with our cooperative shareholders. So one of the decisions that we took is that we opened like pop-up stores, pop-up banking agencies. Basically, it's an empty store somewhere in a city. We move in for 3 weeks. We invite the people and the cooperatives in the areas to come. The client service department is there. We have debate evenings, etc. They can come, and then we move to another city. So we already did Ghent for 3 weeks. We did Liège for 3 weeks, and now at this time we have a store open at the Flagey in Brussels for 3 weeks, for another 2 weeks. So we already 1 week and 2 weeks. So everybody's welcome. You can come there. You can feel the vibe. You can talk to people because we are a digital bank. But I think for a lot of people in these cooperative shareholders, it's good to see and to feel and to taste and to meet people as well. So that's how we want to connect them with them again.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's some questions about sustainability and investing. So there's, for instance, how does it work? Maybe how do you decide on your investments? You told already some a little bit about it. How you gave or how you work together with your investment people. But for instance, they say, have you already refused a business on the basis of sustainability? Like,
I think at this stage, what is important is that we're still building the professional offer at this time being. So we're defining our ESG strategies linked to, do we give a credit to this institution, yes or no? So it could be potentially in the future if somebody comes and says, I just want to install a drill because there's some oil in my ground. Sorry, you're not going to get a credit from us. So the investment fund that we have is a patrimonial fund, so a mixed fund with standard stock listed shares and stock listed and bonds. So it is in that very straightforward. We use MSCI and a best of class methodology to select the things we invest in. And I think the very important difference is that the rules that we apply to our investment fund are the same rules that we would apply if NewB as a company was going to invest. Just to make a difference is you have Belfius who has, or BNP Paribas, who has a lot of sustainable investment funds. But if they want to still invest themselves in fossil fuels, it's okay. I mean, they can do this. We think it's a little bit of hypocrite. You know, if you think sustainability is important, you don't just create a product because there's a demand. You also do it yourself. So it could be very important is the credits that we do. We call them green credits because it needs to have a green purpose. If there's not a green purpose behind it, you're not going to get the credit either. So yes, we would say no if it doesn't fit.
Okay, and what if there are if you have to make trade-offs, when someone writes between stakeholders' aspirations, like for instance, some stakeholders want focus on return, others focus on DEI, others on the environment. Do the institutional investors weigh more, for instance, then?
Yeah. No. Like I explained, a cooperative structure, it doesn't make a difference. It is one person, one vote. And we have to have a resolution that passes in all the 3 colleges. So even if for example, the sustainable topic would be like on top of the list at B college, but C college doesn't matter, doesn't take care of it, then it's not passing either. Because, you know, it can be the other way around. If they say we want NewB to invest in fossil fuels, and the C wants this because it's important for the return. If the B and the A don't align, it's not gonna happen because you need to change. So it is a more balanced, more complicated structure, cooperative structure, but it is more balanced to one person, one vote, and not if you have a lot of shares or big shares, etc. It's not going to make you more decisive.
Okay. And another question is: does the Ukraine war have any influence? Has had any influence on sustainability investment decisions? For instance, like not going into the direction of sustainability because of other.
No, it didn't have a lot of influence on NewB. We're a Belgian bank. We're a startup bank. We didn't have Ukraine or definitely not Russia as one of the countries we're investing in, because there are a lot of on ESG, a lot of topics why you should not be investing in Russia. So we didn't have any exposure there either. So it didn't impact our investment strategy at all. No.
So you are really a Belgian bank, and that's. Do you have ambitions to become European or?
No.
Right now,
No.
Belgium.
Belgian bank.
Yeah, okay.
It's also because a cooperative structure can make it a lot more complicated if you start to become bigger and bigger, and especially across countries. So Belgian, it's a Belgian bank.
Okay. There's some other questions about remuneration. So the remuneration policy with respect to the board members, is it fixed? Is it variable? And also, are there sustainability KPIs or what kind of criteria are there for the executive team also?
Okay,
you can say something about it.
Yeah. Remuneration is fixed per attendant. If somebody attends meeting, and we have a lot of people on our board who actually then we don't pay the person, but we also pay the institution that is behind. So it's not personally, but it's like it gives to, for example, it goes to Greenpeace. It doesn't go to Valerie, it goes to Greenpeace. So that's important, and they're not huge amounts. And I think initially it was even the idea that the board members would not get a remuneration at all. Secondly, are there KPIs? It's really funny because sustainability is that much part of our DNA that it is strange to put KPIs on there. I think the best KPIs, I would make a link with the societal committee and the charter. So they're basically setting our KPIs because we need to follow those guidelines. If we don't follow, we get like a score from 0 to 4 in this report. So I would say that's the best way that you can say that these are the sustainability KPIs that we follow at NewB.
Okay, that makes you like towards the future. You see a trend in sustainable banking. How will you? How do you see it? Is it like, are you threatened that your unique position will go away a little bit, or how do you see the future of NewB?
Yeah, well, basically, I would say like the fact that there's a lot more attention to sustainability is a good thing. I think there's all the efforts that is done on that respect is needed if we want to save this planet one day. I think we have a long way to go. So we shouldn't see this as a competitive thing. Sustainability is a good thing. The fact that others pay attention to it, it is something that should be valued and appreciated as much. For me, the most important thing is that it shouldn't be a competitive thing if it's between those who really take it at heart. The most concerned I am is because of all the greenwashing that is going on a lot of levels, which is again, you use sustainability because it sells better, but basically in the end, it doesn't make an impact on the planet we're living on or the society we're living in. So we still have a long way to go in that aspect. I think people put sustainability forward. It's more about greenwashing than because they want to make it part of their DNA of the company. So there's a long way to go. Impact first should be more driven, and then looking at a financial return. I always say, like when people take a decision on, I want to install solar panels, it's because their electricity bill is going up. It is not because they want to make a sustainable impact. It's a financial return. You have a lot of people who say, like, I want to drive, I'm going to buy a car, I'm buying a hybrid or an electric SUV. That's not sustainable. You know, that your sustainable choice should be, I'm not driving my car. Stop. I'm using soft transport, and especially not as SUV, because that's a big car, even if it's electric. Just the CO2 emissions to create that car is already huge. So we have a long way to go. So I don't think there will be, and sustainability, we should work together. As a bank, NewB as a bank, I don't see it as a threat. I think it's, like I said, it's a combination. NewB is a combination of cooperative, ethical, and sustainable bank. And the combination of those three in one entity, being a bank, is unique. And I think it's going to stay unique for a long time.
And maybe another question towards the future is, of course, the press, where they say that you have to raise additional capital. Is it a challenge? How do you see that for the future?
It's definitely a challenge. If somebody has this 40 million, just drop me a little email. It's very welcome. No, it is a challenge. It's basically when you create a bank, it's not like a supermarket. You have a lot of rules, liquidity ratios, solvency ratios, liquidity ratios you need to adhere to. When we raised the initial capital of 35 million, that we knew already in the prospectus back then that we have to raise additional capital. If you compare it with other banks, 35 million is peanuts. It's really peanuts. So the capital that we're raising at we're looking for at this moment is 40 million. Is an amount that we determined ourselves in negotiation with the national bank, because they always have to agree, based on a new financial plan, and it's linked to be able to expand our offer to professional clients. So then I make a link with all the organizations that we have, these organizations that have a lot of ambition in putting money to society and better planet. But if you as a bank, you want to create credits, you need to have buffer capital. So it's capital that really sits there because you collect as a bank the money from the savings. The person who saves with you can actually ask his money back every day, but you transform it to a credit, which is a longer term. And so to get this short term to a longer term, there you have to create a buffer and a fundament somewhere, which are ratios that are set by the national bank. So in order to be able to create that offer, we need to create an extra buffer. We also need money to really build the thing and then still keep on going. So so it is not easy to find this. A very important key as well is in this capital increase. Like I said, the previous one, 2019, there was especially the individuals who contributed. It was already specified at that time that the next capital increase would be by institutional investors. We can only raise 5 million a year extra with individuals. So that's why we really go now to institutional investors to find this 40 million extra. But the good thing is this 40 million, based on the financial planning that we have now, should bring us to the break-even point. A very important point in the history of a cooperative bank is to be break-even, which would be 2026 at that stage. So it's a challenge, but it's an important one. It's an important next step for NewB to be able to grow and to become this, what we call this reference ethical and sustainable bank in Belgium.
That's the ultimate ambition. That's the goal.
That's the ultimate ambition, indeed.
Okay. Good. There's a question about the horizontal structure you were talking about. That like teams that are self-managing. So the person is wondering if that's the case, how are the mechanisms for steering and control then within the board, since you can't rely on the different levels of control? How does the board controls, or maybe the executive team controls how is that managed?
Well, anyway, for the levels are there. If you call the board, they supervise the executive team. That's clear. And we, as an executive team, we supervise the teams that are below. And so that's legally, we cannot really change that. It's really within. Instead of having like a layer of middle managers or a head of, we don't want to do this. And within the teams, they're still steering, which means they agree between them on different projects. But lots of times, what projects there are or what are the focus points do come from the General Assembly, who directs it to the board, who has the executives, who needs to steer the day-to-day. So that level still counts, but it's basically on teams level there. It's very horizontal, or between the executive and the teams themselves. You don't have middle managers who actually block to block the access.
Okay.
We don't have, I think one of the most important things is that we really want to make sure that we know what's happening. We feel still, we don't lose the connection with the team, but also we don't want to lose the connection with our shareholders, the cooperative shareholders. And there it's very important to be close to people. We don't, as directors, we don't have offices, separated offices, like closed offices. We're on the floor with everybody else. One day I'm on the first, one day, another day I'm on the fourth, and that's just the case. I mean, we have to be accessible and reachable to everybody.
Very direct lines.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And then, yeah, something that is a challenge for many companies, that's involving the shareholder. So how do you ensure that they come to the General Assembly, that they play their stewardship role? How do you keep them engaged, or is that not a problem?
It is. I think it, even for a cooperative structure, I won't say it's a problem. It is a challenge. And I think because when I was talking to different other organizations who more work on societal goals, etc., after COVID, for some kind of reasons, people don't tend to, engage a lot. Everybody thought like, oh, everybody's going to party and whatever. But if it doesn't interest them or it doesn't concern them straight away directly, they don't come. So very important for a General Assembly is that we have to be transparent enough and direct enough and explaining what is the importance of a General Assembly. So we did issue a newsletter to the people to say, like, you're shareholders of this company. You have a role to play, and this is your role, because on this assembly, you're going to decide on the future of NewB, on what you're going to tell us what we need to do. If you don't do, we don't know. So we really, with the newsletter, we try to explain them. We also invite them on an prior to the General Assembly, we have an online info session, so that people, if they don't want to travel from where they are to the General Assembly, they can already participate. Now also, and that's thanks to COVID, we have a live stream. So the General Assembly itself, it might be that there are only 12 people in the room, but there are probably 7, 8, or whatever, 1,000 people that can follow it from their sofas at home. But what we also, I think the most important piece is, it's not about attending the General Assembly, it's about voting. So one of the things that we also have is that with these online sessions, we also have local sessions where we explain the things prior to the General Assembly. You can start voting on the resolutions 14 days prior, as from 40 days prior to the General Assembly. So that means that people can vote not just during the 2 hours or whatever, but gives them a bigger time frame. And again, with every communication that we do, we insist on the importance of that vote, of let yourself be heard, because you're the one who is driving the future of NewB and is deciding what we're going to build and create.
Yeah, it's a part of the communication and the transparency, I think, towards the stake and the shareholders.
Yeah. And again, like I said, communication is so key. If you want to do stakeholder management, communication is key. Yeah. You just have to keep them involved, keep talking to them. Don't give up if they don't hear you because it's an email and everybody receives 10,000 emails a day. You need to invite them to something. If they don't want to come from Ostend to go to a General Assembly in Brussels, well, make it an online thing. So make things accessible so that you break down the hurdles of really participating, because participation is also one of the values of NewB.
Okay, we have heard you, Katrien. Thank you. It was very clear. It was very interesting as well, quite groundbreaking. So I appreciate it very much that you took an hour of your time to be here. Thank you very much, and best of luck with NewB and the project.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you
everybody
also.
Has a nice evening, and thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I wanted to do also. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you for listening, for joining, for asking your questions. Next time, we're going to talk with a listed company, someone from my backyard. So that will be very interesting as well. Join that talk as well. And if you want to meet in physically, then I would like to draw your attention to the summer school, which is coming up on the 30th of June. We have a very nice program, and we're just looking forward to welcome you back in in Cercle du Lac in Ottigny. Voilà, so it's 6 o'clock. I close the meeting. Thank you, Katrien. Thank you, everyone, and have a very nice evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.